In the mid-1800s in Victorian Britain, bare-knuckle boxers fought for over 100 rounds with no gloves, facing broken faces, mangled jaws, and certain death while the crowd roared. These fighters rose from the humblest working-class origins to become the greatest sporting superstars of their day, fighting for the honour to be the very first undisputed champion of the world. Here's what life was really like as a Victorian boxer. Okay, so, if you're here a lot, you know I ask for likes and subscribes, but seriously, where are you guys? Comment your location and time. Sometimes I see someone from California listening at 3 p.m. and I'm like, are you napping? Tonight's stop, Victorian boxing rings. Hold up though. Get cozy first. Adjust those pillows. Pull up that blanket. Trust me, once we get going, you won't want to move. The blood is everywhere. On your knuckles, in your eyes, dripping down your chin. You blink hard, trying to clear your vision. The roar of the crowd comes in waves, one moment deafening, the next oddly distant. Your mouth tastes like copper pennies. 3 of your teeth feel loose, and your right eye has swollen nearly shut. Welcome to London 1847. You're a bare-knuckle boxer, and you're in the middle of the fight of your life. The man across from you doesn't look much better. His face is a mess of red pulp where your left hook connected 2 rounds ago. His nose sits at an unnatural angle. That was from round 17. You've been fighting for nearly 2 hours now, and neither of you shows any sign of quitting. Round 64, the timekeeper shouts. You think about the thin straw mattress waiting for you back in the room you rent above the Fighting Cock pub. Not like your warm, comfortable bed right now. Your actual home is barely more than a closet with a window, but it's the first place you've ever had to yourself, and you've earned every penny of the rent through blood and broken bones. You okay there, Jackie boy? Your corner man whispers as he splashes water on your face between rounds. He's a former fighter himself, one eye milky white from an old injury, knuckles permanently swollen into gnarled lumps. Never better, you croak, though your ribs scream in protest with each breath. I spent 3 months researching Victorian boxing for this story, and let me tell you, these guys were a different breed. Our modern boxers are tough, but these bare-knuckle fighters, absolutely insane levels of endurance. See, in today's boxing, you've got weight classes, padded gloves, rounds that last a clean 3 minutes with nice 1-minute breaks. But in Victorian bare-knuckle fighting, a round only ended when someone hit the ground. Could be 30 seconds, could be 15 minutes of non-stop punishment. The crazy part is that hitting the ground was often a strategy. When you needed a breather, you might take a light hit and go down deliberately just to get that 30-second recovery period. Imagine playing that game for 60, 70, sometimes over 100 rounds. Time, the referee calls, and you're back on your feet swaying slightly. Your opponent, Butcher Bill, they call him, lunges forward with a wild right hand. You see it coming. One benefit of fighting this long, you learn each other's patterns and slip to the side, letting his fist sail past your ear. The move costs him his balance, and you drive a sharp left into his exposed ribs. The crowd explodes. You can make out individual voices now. Break his bloody jaw, boy. Finish him, Butcher. 10 quid on the young one. I know what you're thinking. Why would anyone do this? Good question. For most fighters, it was one of the only ways out of soul-crushing poverty. In Victorian Britain, if you were born poor, you'd almost certainly die poor, unless you had a special talent. And for some men, that talent was violence. Most bare-knuckle boxers came from the working class. Butchers, blacksmiths, dock workers, guys who grew up doing hard physical labour and fighting in the streets. For them, boxing wasn't just sport, it was one of the few chances to escape a life of grinding poverty. Take Tom Spring, born Tom Winter in rural Herefordshire in 1795. His father was a butcher, taught young Tom to box by making him punch a bag hanging from an apple tree. When legendary boxer Tom Cribb discovered him at an amateur match, Spring was offered the chance of a lifetime to train in London under the champion himself. At 18 years old, Spring left behind the only home he'd ever known for the smoke, noise and filth of London, a city that would chew up and spit out most country boys. Jesus, you mutter as Butcher Bill lands a heavy blow to your shoulder. The impact sends a jolt of pain down to your fingertips. You clinch with him, grabbing his sweat-slick body to buy a moment's rest. Up close, you can smell the gin on his breath, the blood and sweat soaking both your bodies. His eye is swollen, completely shut now, and a gash above his other eye keeps seeping blood. Despite his corner's attempts to close it, the referee breaks you apart and you resume the brutal dance. You're fighting at a place called the Fives Court, one of London's premier boxing venues. It's not much more than a large room with benches arranged in a square, but today it's packed with everyone from street urchins who snuck in to actual aristocracy wearing silk top hats. That's the weird thing about boxing in this era. It draws from every social class, while working class folk crowd the back. The fancy, what they call boxing enthusiasts from the upper classes, sit up front in their fine clothes, betting obscene amounts of money on the outcome. And speaking of betting, the gambling on these fights is absolutely wild. More money might change hands during a championship bout than most workers would see in a lifetime. Prize fights were often called mills, as in they were money mills for gamblers and promoters. Lord Palmerston, the actual Prime Minister of Britain, was a huge boxing fan. So was Lord Byron, one of the most famous poets of the day. Charles Dickens wrote about prize fighting. These high society types slumming it at bloody bare-knuckle bouts is kinda like if today's tech billionaires and Hollywood celebrities were all obsessed with underground fight clubs. Butcher Bill's legs are looking wobbly now. You've been working his body for the last several rounds and it's starting to pay off. Your own arms feel like they're filled with lead, but you force yourself to keep them up. He's fading, your corner man hisses in your ear. Don't let up now. The thing about bare-knuckle fighting is that it was as much about endurance as power. Modern boxing matches go a maximum of 12 rounds, but Victorian fights, the famous 1860 championship bout between Tom Sayers and John Carmel Heenan, went for 37 punishing rounds over more than 2 hours, and it only ended because the crowd broke into the ring when Heenan started strangling Sayers over the ropes. I mean, picture that scene. Two guys have been beating each other senseless for hours, and then one starts choking the other with the ropes, and the crowd just loses it and storms the ring. The fight was declared a draw amid chaos, but both men were national heroes after that. Sayers in England and Heenan in America. You land a perfect right cross that snaps Butcher Bill's head back. For a moment he stands frozen, then his eyes roll back and he drops to the dirt floor like a sack of coal. The crowd erupts. Your cornerman leaps over the rope, lifting your arm in victory as the referee counts. Bill isn't getting up this time. Ladies and gentlemen, the ring announcer shouts. Your winner in 64 rounds, the fighting footman, Jack Riley. Money changes hands all around the room. You're too exhausted to celebrate properly, but you know what this means. A bigger purse, a better reputation, and matches against higher-ranked fighters. From a medical standpoint, these fights were absolute nightmares. One surgeon who studied the injuries said the punches could damage eyebrow, nose, rip off an ear, break teeth, smash jaw, and that a blow to the neck could fracture the windpipe and voice box. Broken ribs could puncture lungs, causing internal bleeding. And there were no real doctors at ringside, just experienced cornermen who might throw water on you, give you a sip of brandy, and maybe set a broken nose with their thumbs before sending you back out. Your cornerman wipes your face with a damp cloth. Good work, lad. Rest up. Promoter wants to talk terms for your next fight. And that's the business of it. No time to heal properly. Your body is your only asset, and you've got to keep fighting to earn. Most boxers from this era died young, from injuries, alcohol, or the general hard living that came with the fighting life. Back in your small room above the fighting cock, you inspect the damage. 2 possibly broken ribs, a gash above your left eye that probably needs stitches but will have to make do with a plaster, knuckles swollen to twice their normal size. You carefully unwrap the strips of cloth you bound your hands with before the fight. No gloves in bare-knuckle boxing, just thin strips of cloth to provide some minimal protection to the knuckles. Didn't help much. Your hands look like raw meat. The landlady, Mrs. Higgins, knocks and enters, without waiting for a response. She's carrying a basin of hot water and some clean rags. "Saw the fight," she says gruffly, setting down her supplies. "Not bad for a skinny lad. Need help with them cuts?" She doesn't wait for an answer, already dabbing at your face with a wet cloth. The water in the basin quickly turns pink. "Thank you, ma'am," you manage. "Don't thank me. Rent's going up a shilling now you're winning proper fights." She's not entirely joking, but her hands are surprisingly gentle as she cleans your wounds. Despite all its brutality, bare-knuckle boxing actually had rules. The London prize ring rules established in the 1740s and refined in 1838. They banned eye gouging and biting. Yeah, they had to specifically outlaw those, but allowed wrestling moves, throws, and fibbing. Which is when you'd grab an opponent by the neck or hair and just pummel him repeatedly. Super civilized stuff, clearly. The training methods were just as brutal and rudimentary as the fighting itself. Fighters would run miles each day, often carrying weights. They'd punch bags filled with grain or sand. They'd spar without gloves to condition their hands. Diet wasn't exactly scientific either. A typical fighter's diet included lots of meat, especially beef and mutton, bread, vegetables, and beer. Yes, beer was considered training food. Some fighters would consume a gallon or more of beer daily during training, believing it provided strength and energy. In some ways, they weren't wrong. When your diet lacks calories and nutrition, the carbs and calories in beer actually helped. But obviously, the alcohol part wasn't doing them any favours for recovery. As you lie on your thin mattress that night, every inch of your body aching, you stare at the ceiling and calculate your earnings. After paying your trainer and cornermen, you've cleared £6, about half a year's wages for an average labourer, earned in a single afternoon. Not bad for a former footman who used to earn scraps serving aristocrats. Tomorrow you'll barely be able to move, but tonight you've got enough to eat well, pay your rent, and maybe even send something home to your mother. You drift off to sleep thinking about the next fight, the next opponent, the next chance to climb a little higher in this brutal world. This is the life you've chosen, or perhaps the life that chose you. Outside your window, London continues its chaotic dance. Street vendors hawking their wares, carriages clattering over cobblestones, drunken arguments spilling out from pubs. The greatest city in the world, filthy, glorious and unforgiving. In Victorian Britain, life was relentlessly hard for the working class. 12-hour workdays, 6 days a week, in factories, mines or docks. Children as young as 5 or 6 working alongside adults. No safety regulations, no healthcare, no safety net if you got injured. For someone with fighting skills, the prize ring offered a desperate sort of hope. Top fighters could earn more in one bout than most workers made in years. but it came at a terrible physical cost. Even the greatest champions rarely made it to old age. Tom Sayers, one of the most famous boxers of the era, died at 39 from tuberculosis, diabetes, and the effects of alcohol. His American opponent, John Carmel Heenan, made it to 38 before tuberculosis took him too. Yet when Sayers died, his funeral procession was one of the largest London had ever seen. Over 100,000 people lined the streets to pay their respects, a testament to how deeply prize fighting had embedded itself in Victorian culture. As your consciousness fades, you realise that for better or worse, you're part of this world now. The blood, the pain, the roaring crowd, the desperate gamble for a better life, all of it sewn together into the patchwork fate of a Victorian boxer. The last thought that passes through your mind before sleep claims you is simple. I wonder how long I can last in this game before it kills me. Unlike you in your comfortable modern bed right now, sleep for a Victorian boxer wasn't about relaxation but recovery. The desperate need to heal enough to fight again. As you drift off to sleep in your safe, warm home, miles and centuries away from those brutal rings, perhaps you can appreciate just how far we've come. And yet, something about their raw courage, their willingness to stand toe-to-toe and test the very limits of human endurance, still calls to something primal in us. Maybe that's why these stories of the first fighting champions still captivate us, even as we wince at their brutality. Sleep well. There's more to this story tomorrow. Dawn breaks through your grimy window, painting your small room in dirty gold. Your body screams in protest as you force yourself to sit up. Each breath sends daggers through your ribs. Your knuckles have scabbed overnight, tight and painful. This is the morning after victory. Feels a lot like defeat. Up, you lazy mongrel. A loud bang on your door. Ned Clark, your trainer. No rest for the wicked. You grunt in response, which he takes as an invitation to barge in. Ned's a tank of a man, 50 years old, with cauliflower ears and a permanently broken nose that whistles when he breathes. 20 years ago he was a champion. Now he makes champions, or tries to. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, he says, surveying your battered face. You look like hammered shit. Feel worse, you manage, voice like gravel. Good. Pain means you're alive. He tosses a bundle onto your bed. Clean yourself up. Got you eggs and steak at the butcher's. You need red meat to build the blood back. This was actual medical advice in the 1840s, by the way. Fighters believed red meat built blood after a fight, and they weren't entirely wrong. The iron and protein did help recovery, even if they didn't understand the science behind it. See, medical knowledge around boxing injuries was primitive at best. No ice packs, no anti-inflammatories, no physical therapy, just raw eggs, red meat, whiskey for the pain, and maybe some herbal poultices your trainer swore by. Got us a meeting, Ned says, watching you struggle to pull on your shirt. Man with money wants to talk. 2 hours, the rose and crown. Not fighting again for weeks, you protest. Your body couldn't take it. Ned snorts. Course not, you daft bastard. You're meat for at least a month, but we need to strike while you're hot. Yesterday's win put eyes on you. The bundle he brought contains a fresh shirt, slightly too big but cleaner than anything you own, and a small jar of pungent-smelling salve. For them hands, he explains. Old gypsy remedy, horse fat, beeswax, and God knows what else. Don't ask, just rub it in. You force down breakfast at the pub downstairs. 3 barely cooked eggs and a slab of bloody steak. The protein helps, but your jaw aches with every chew. The landlady brings you tea with honey, a kindness you hadn't expected. For your throat, lad, she says. You took some hits there. This was the life cycle of a Victorian fighter. Brutal combat followed by desperate recovery, trying to heal enough before financial necessity forced you back into the ring. Many fought while still injured from previous bouts, accumulating damage that would eventually end their careers or their lives. While today's boxers might take months between fights, Victorian pugilists often fought every few weeks. The human body simply can't heal that quickly, especially without modern medicine. Every fighter carried injuries from their last bout into their next one. The cumulative damage was catastrophic. Walking to your meeting takes effort. Your legs are stiff, your back aches, and the bright morning light makes your head pound. Every passerby seems to stare, some with admiration, others with disgust. Your face is a public advertisement for your profession. The Rose and Crown is a step up from your usual haunts, cleaner with actual glass in the windows instead of oiled paper. Ned is already there, nursing a pint and chatting with a well-dressed gentleman. "Ah, here he is," Ned booms as you approach. "My promising young fighter, Jack Riley." The gentleman turns, appraising you with cold efficiency. He's maybe 40, wearing a tailored suit and gold watch chain. His hands are soft, uncalloused. He's never worked a day in his life. Not with those hands. "Mr. Holmes," Ned introduces him. "Businessman and sporting enthusiast. You've learned enough to know what that means. A gambler, a man who makes money from other men's blood." "Sit, young man," Holmes says, gesturing to a chair. "That was impressive work yesterday. 64 rounds against the butcher. Most wouldn't last 20. You mumble thanks, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. "I'll be direct," Holmes continues, sipping port despite the early hour mail. "You have talent, but no management. Mr. Clark here is an excellent trainer, but you need backing to reach the top ranks." He's not wrong. Boxing in Victorian England was as much about connections as talent. The best fights, the biggest purses, they went to fighters with powerful patrons, men who could arrange matches, handle promotion, place strategic bets. I should mention, these businessmen weren't always on the up and up. Boxing operated in a legal grey area, and many patrons had connections to gambling networks, criminal enterprises, and corrupt officials who could be paid to look the other way when a fight was arranged. "I can arrange 3 fights in the next year," Holmes explains. "Proper fights with proper purses. £200 for the first, 3 for the second, 5 for the third, assuming you win, of course." Your head spins at the numbers. £500 is a fortune, more than most working men would see in a decade. It's a path out of poverty, not just for you, but for your whole family. "What's your cut?" Ned asks bluntly. Holmes smiles thinly. 40% of winnings plus betting privileges. 30, Ned counters, and we get 10% of your betting profits. The two men haggle while you sit in silence, still trying to process what's happening. Yesterday you were fighting for a £6 purse, now they're discussing hundreds. "So he'd need to go to Bristol for the first fight," Holmes is saying. "There's a man there, Jenkins. Strong but slow. Good match for our boy." "Bristol," you finally speak up. "That's 100 miles. Holmes looks at you like you're a particularly slow child. "Yes, and Manchester for the second, likely London for the third. Did you think you'd become champion fighting the same dock workers and butchers' boys forever?" He has a point. The boxing circuit stretched across Britain, with fighters travelling between major cities for important bouts. This wasn't easy in the 1840s. Travel meant uncomfortable stagecoaches or the relatively new railways, which were still expensive. Many fighters had never travelled more than a few miles from their birthplace before boxing took them on the road. The meeting ends with handshakes and a signed agreement, your X mark on a document you can't read, promising your fighting future to a man you just met. Ned seems pleased, though, and you trust his judgment more than your own in these matters. This changes everything, he tells you as you leave. No more back alley scraps. You're moving up, Jackie boy. The deal made, Ned drags you to his training quarters, a converted stable behind another pub. Despite your protests that you need to rest, he insists you start preparing immediately. Champion ain't made in the ring, he says, handing you a rope. Champion's made in training. You start skipping, an exercise fighters have used for centuries to build footwork and stamina. Every jump sends pain through your ribs, but you grit your teeth and continue. After 10 minutes, you're drenched in sweat and struggling to breathe. Pathetic, Ned comments, though not unkindly. 5 more minutes, then the bag. The bag is a canvas sack filled with sand, hanging from a beam. Not the refined equipment of modern gyms. This thing is hard as stone and rough enough to take more skin off your already damaged knuckles. Not with the hands, you protest, showing him your split knuckles. Then practice blocking, he says without sympathy. Arms up, elbows in, move your feet. You took too many hits yesterday because you stand flat-footed like a damn statue. Victorian training methods were brutal but effective in their own way. They didn't have the scientific understanding of exercise physiology we have today, but they recognized the fundamentals. Build strength, improve endurance, develop technique through endless repetition. A typical training regimen involved running, often while carrying weights, skipping rope for footwork and stamina, punching heavy bags or pads, sparring, though not too often before fights, weight work with primitive dumbbells or medicine balls, diet focused on meat and bread for protein and energy. By noon, you're completely spent. Ned finally relents, sending you to sit while he brings bread and cheese for lunch. You did good yesterday, he says, his gruff voice softening slightly. Real good, but Jenkins is a different class of fighter. He's been at it 10 years, fought everyone from Liverpool to Plymouth, knows every dirty trick in the book. You think I can beat him? You ask between mouthfuls. Ned considers this, head tilted. If we train right and fight smart, yeah, you're faster, younger, hungrier, but he'll hurt you worse than the butcher did. Need to be ready for that. The next few weeks fall into a painful rhythm. Up at dawn for a 5-mile run, regardless of weather. Breakfast of eggs, steak and bread. 2 hours of bag work, skipping and strength exercises. Rest at midday, then more training in the afternoon. Sparring twice weekly with local fighters Ned brings in. Your hands never fully heal. A fighter's hands rarely did in this era. Instead, the skin over your knuckles gradually hardens into callus, bones underneath permanently swollen. You learn to ignore the constant pain, to fight through it. One evening, Ned takes you to a gentleman's club. Not the kind with dancing girls, but the kind with rich men in smoking jackets. You feel profoundly out of place in your clean but threadbare clothes, standing awkwardly while Ned talks to potential backers. Just stand there and look dangerous, he had instructed you. Don't talk unless asked a direct question. These toffs want a fighting animal, not a conversation partner, and that's exactly how they treat you, like a prized but slightly dangerous animal. They inspect your build, comment on your reach, discuss your prospects as if you're not standing right there. One man even grabs your arm without asking, squeezing your bicep to assess your strength. You nearly deck him on instinct before Ned's warning glare stops you. Strong lad, the man comments to Ned, but how's his stamina past 40 rounds? Like a bloody steam engine, Ned boasts. Butcher Bill couldn't break him in 64. I might put £50 on him for Bristol, if he looks good in training next week. This part of boxing hasn't changed much over the centuries. The uncomfortable dynamic where fighters, especially those from working class backgrounds, are treated as commodities by the moneyed classes who finance the sport. In Victorian England, this class divide was even more pronounced. Boxers were entertainment for the wealthy, who placed massive bets on the outcomes. Some aristocrats genuinely loved the sport and respected its participants, but many simply viewed fighters as vessels for gambling, disposable once they stopped winning. What has changed is the level of protection for the athletes. Modern boxers have managers, contracts, medical supervision. Victorian fighters had, well, men like Ned doing their best, but often out of their depth against the power brokers. "We leave for Bristol in 3 days, Ned tells you as you walk home. Holmes is arranging everything. Train light tomorrow, rest the day after. Need you sharp." The journey to Bristol takes a full day by railway, your first time on a train. Under normal circumstances, you might have enjoyed the novelty. Instead, you spend the journey staring out the window, mind consumed with the coming fight. Jenkins has a reputation. They call him the Hammer, for his powerful right hand that's supposedly broken 3 men's jaws. 15 years in the prize ring, only 4 losses in over 30 fights. A local hero in Bristol with a passionate following. You're the unknown outsider, brought in as fresh meat. Bristol is bigger than you expected, a bustling port city with ships from around the world crowding its harbour. Holmes has arranged lodgings at an inn near the docks. Not fancy, but clean enough. You and Ned share a room to save money. The morning of the fight, you wake before dawn, stomach churning with nerves. Ned makes you eat. Dry toast and tea, nothing that might come back up in the ring. Then a short walk to loosen your muscles, careful not to tire yourself. The fight venue is a converted warehouse. By noon, it's packed with spectators, dock workers and merchants standing shoulder to shoulder with gentlemen in fine coats. The noise is deafening as you make your way to the ring, a simple roped-off square with sawdust covering the wooden floor. Jenkins is already there, circling inside the ropes. He's older than you expected, late 30s at least, with greying hair at his temples, but his body is a mass of ropey muscle, and his face is a roadmap of scar tissue. This man has absorbed more punishment than you've ever dealt out. The formalities are brief. The referee, a portly man with impressive whiskers, calls you both to the centre. Clean fight, gentlemen. No hits below the belt, no gouging. Fight ends when one man can't continue or concedes. Jenkins stares at you with flat, emotionless eyes. The eyes of a man who's done this too many times to feel anything anymore. "I'll try not to kill you, boy," he says quietly. "No money in corpses." You return to your corner, where Ned gives last-minute instructions you barely hear over the roaring in your ears. Then the bell rings, actually a hammer striking an iron bar, and it begins. Jenkins comes out cautiously, more technical than Butcher Bill. He circles, tests your defense with light jabs, looking for weaknesses. You respond in kind, remembering Ned's advice. First 5 rounds, just stay safe. Learn his patterns. He's old, make him work. The early rounds are tense but uneventful. Jenkins lands some solid hits, but nothing that puts you in danger. You connect with a few good counters that seem to surprise him with their speed. "He's slowing already," Ned whispers during a break. "Old legs, but watch that right hand. He's loading it up." Ding. Round 8 is when it happens. You slip a jab, step inside, and walk straight into the right hand Ned warned you about. It catches you perfectly on the jaw, a sledgehammer blow that makes your vision explode into white stars. You're on the floor without remembering how you got there. The count reaches 7 before you can force yourself back to your feet, legs wobbling like a newborn colt's. 8, 9, you fit to continue? The referee asks, peering into your eyes. You nod, unable to form words. Jenkins comes in for the kill, but some animal instinct for survival takes over. You clinch, hold, survive the round through desperation alone. Sit, breathe. Ned's voice seems to come from very far away as you collapse in your corner. He presses something cold against your jaw, a metal flask filled with water. The pain recedes slightly, enough to clear your head. "I'm okay," you mumble through a mouth that feels stuffed with cotton. "Like hell you are," Ned replies, but he used a lot of energy trying to finish you. Now he's the one breathing heavy. He's right. The next round, Jenkins charges forward, but his legs have slowed, his punches coming a fraction later than before. You focus on movement, circling away from that deadly right hand, jabbing when you can, making him chase you. 2 more rounds of this, and the dynamic has shifted completely. Jenkins is gasping for air, his shots growing wild as frustration mounts. The Bristol crowd senses the change, their cheers taking on a concerned edge. In round 12, you see your opening. Jenkins throws a looping right that misses entirely, leaving him off balance. You step in with a perfect left hook to his liver, a shot Ned drilled into you for weeks. The effect is immediate and dramatic. Jenkins folds like he's been stabbed, face contorted in agony. The liver shot, as boxers well know, causes a unique kind of pain that simply can't be fought through. There's no count needed. Jenkins remains kneeling, one glove raised in surrender. The Bristol crowd falls silent for one shocked moment, then erupts, some in cheers, others in angry shouts. You've just become the most hated man in the city and also the most respected. As Ned wraps a blanket around your shoulders and hustles you toward the exit, you catch Holmes watching from ringside. He's smiling as he collects what looks like a considerable amount of money from several ashen-faced gentlemen. "Did we just make an enemy?" you ask Ned, nodding toward the grumbling Bristol crowd. Ned grins, exposing his missing teeth. "Nah, you just made a reputation." In your room that night, counting your share of the purse, more money than you've ever possessed at one time, you realize something has fundamentally changed. You're not just fighting for survival anymore. You've entered a world where men like you can rise, can make a name, can perhaps even secure a future beyond the ring. It's a dangerous world, one that breaks most who enter it. But tonight, bandaging your hands and replaying the perfect liver shot that crumpled Jenkins, you allow yourself to believe you might be different. You might be the one who survives. On the train back to London the next morning, Ned spreads a newspaper between you. Your fight gets a full column, complete with a crude illustration of Jenkins kneeling in defeat. "The Fighting Footman Conquers Bristol," reads the headline. "You're famous now," Ned says, unable to hide his pride. "Manchester will be tougher though. Alan's a proper fighter, not an aging brawler like Jenkins." As the English countryside rolls past the window, you realise you've crossed a threshold. There's no going back to anonymity, to small fights in local pubs. For better or worse, you're now part of the spectacle of the prize ring, that bloody theatre where men like you live and die for the entertainment of others. And somewhere deep in your mind, past the pain and swelling pride, a small voice wonders, how long until someone does to you what you just did to Jenkins? Word of your victory spreads fast. When you return to London, the Fighting Cock is buzzing with energy. People who never gave you a second glance now slap your back, buy you drinks, ask for details about Jenkins' famous right hand. "Was he as tough as they say?" an eager dock worker asks, eyes wide. "Tougher," you answer, nursing your ale. His punches felt like being kicked by a horse. You're a local celebrity now, at least in the grimy pubs and boxing halls of working-class London. It's a strange feeling. For years you were invisible, just another poor boy scrapping for pennies. Now men whisper as you pass, women give you second glances, and publicans offer free drinks in hopes you'll grace their establishment with your growing fame. Fame, however, doesn't heal broken ribs or split knuckles. 3 weeks after Bristol, you're still wincing with certain movements. Ned notices, of course, nothing escapes his fighter's eyes. "Need to strengthen them ribs before Manchester," he says one morning as you grimace during rope work. Alan's a body puncher. He'll target your weakness. How long we got, you ask? 3 months. Holmes set the date yesterday. 3 months sounds like luxury after the brutal pace of your early career. Before Ned and Holmes, you'd sometimes fight twice in a month, taking on any challenger for whatever purse was offered. "Got something new to try?" Ned says, leading you to a corner of the training room. There sits a contraption you've never seen, a large leather ball suspended between 2 platforms. "Medicine ball," he explains. "Continental training method. Boxers in France and Germany swear by it. Lie on your back. You do as instructed, and Ned drops the weighted ball onto your stomach. Not hard enough to injure, but with enough force that you instinctively contract your abdominal muscles to absorb the impact. Again," he says, catching the ball as you push it back. 100 times. Builds armour around your vitals. This is completely true, by the way. Medicine balls were one of the first pieces of specialised boxing training equipment, used since ancient times but gaining popularity in Victorian boxing circles. Like modern core training, they helped fighters develop the abdominal strength needed to absorb body blows. Training innovations were constantly being imported from different countries. The continental style Ned mentions referred to more scientific approaches being developed in France and Germany, as opposed to the rougher, more instinct-driven British methods. The next 12 weeks are the most structured training of your life. Ned has mapped out every day, balancing hard work with recovery in ways you'd never considered important. Mondays and Thursdays are for strength, medicine ball work, lifting primitive dumbbells, carrying weights while walking. Tuesdays and Fridays focus on technique, endless hours of punching the bag, practicing blocks and counters, drilling specific combinations. Wednesdays and Saturdays are for sparring, putting everything together against living opponents. Sundays, to your surprise, are for complete rest. Body doesn't build during work, Ned explains when you question this. Builds during rest. Even God took Sundays off, lad. Between sessions, your education continues in other ways. Holmes arranges for you to watch experienced fighters at various London venues, studying their techniques. You spend hours at the Fives Court and similar establishments, absorbing the subtleties of foot position, weight transfer, defensive head movement. "See how Cooper keeps his right hand high?" Ned whispers during one bout. "Old London style, different from the Liverpool fighters. They lead with the left shoulder more." Most fascinating are the regional differences in fighting styles. Just as modern boxing has distinctive national schools, Cuban, Mexican, Eastern European, Victorian boxing had city-specific approaches. London fighters typically used a more upright stance, while northern fighters often adopted a crouched position. Liverpool boxers were known for aggressiveness, Bristol fighters for technical defence. These weren't formalised styles with coaches and manuals. They evolved organically through local tradition, passed from veteran fighters to newcomers in the back rooms of pubs and makeshift gymnasiums. Your growing status also brings new attention, not all of it welcome. One evening, a well-dressed young woman approaches your table at the Fighting Cock. She's clearly not from this neighbourhood, her quality clothing and refined speech marking her as someone from a higher social class. "Mr. Riley," she says, no question in her tone. "I'm Miss Catherine Wilson with the London Illustrated News. I write profiles of interesting Londoners." You shift uncomfortably. "Don't know about interesting, miss. A former footman becoming a rising star in the prize ring?" "I assure you." our readers would find that fascinating. Ned, returning with drinks, spots the interaction and intervenes. "No interviews before Manchester," he says firmly. "Bad luck." After she leaves, you give him a questioning look. "Newspapers," he says with disgust, "write all sorts of rubbish, true or not, and they pay nothing for the privilege of using your name. Holmes is arranging something with the Sporting Times after Manchester, a proper piece with compensation." The press played a crucial role in boxing's popularity during this era. Publications like Bell's Life in London, The Sporting Magazine, and Pierce Egan's Boxiana created celebrities out of successful fighters. Their colourful reporting, often exaggerated for effect, helped transform local fighters into national figures. For boxers from working-class backgrounds, this attention was both opportunity and hazard. The right kind of press could attract wealthy patrons and bigger fights, but it also put pressure on fighters to live up to their printed reputations, sometimes pushing them to fight when injured or take on opponents beyond their abilities. As Manchester approaches, your daily routine expands beyond just training. Holmes brings you to events where wealthy sporting enthusiasts gather, gentlemen's clubs, private dinners, exclusive gambling houses. You're paraded like an exotic specimen, your rough manners and fighting physique a source of fascination for men who've never known physical labour or genuine hunger. "Smile more," Holmes instructs before one such gathering. "They're betting men, need to look confident but not arrogant." "What do I say if they ask me questions?" you ask, adjusting the borrowed suit that doesn't quite fit your fighter's build. Say little, be respectful, call them sir. If they ask about Manchester, tell them you respect Alan's experience but back yourself to win. These social performances become almost as exhausting as your physical training. You're caught between worlds, no longer just a simple fighter, not remotely a gentleman. The coded behaviours and subtle hierarchies of high society are more confusing than any opponent's fighting style. At one such event, you're cornered by an elderly lord with impressive side whiskers and the ruddy complexion of a lifelong drinker. "Tell me, young man," he demands after several brandies have loosened his tongue, "what does it feel like to be hit with bare knuckles? Really feel like, I mean." You consider the question seriously. "Depends where you're hit, sir. Body blows wind you, like you can't catch your breath for what feels like forever. Headshots? Sometimes you don't feel them until after. Sometimes there's a flash of light, then nothing. Worst are the temple hits. Make your legs go all rubbery while your mind stays clear, watching yourself fall and can't do nothing about it." He listens, fascinated, like you're describing exotic travels rather than physical trauma. "Extraordinary, and you choose this life?" The question catches you off guard. Did you choose this, or did poverty and circumstance choose it for you? "It's a living, sir," you finally answer. "Better than most available to lads like me." He nods sagely, as if you've confirmed some private theory. "Remarkable creatures, you fighting men. Remarkable." As you lie in your bed that night, a proper bed now, in lodgings Holmes arranged that don't leak when it rains, you think about the Lord's question. The fighting life has given you more than you ever expected. Money in your pocket, some measure of respect, even a small taste of fame. But the cost is written in the scars on your face, the permanent swelling of your knuckles, the mornings when your joints ache like those of a man 3 times your age. Unlike you right now, cosy in your modern bed with good medical care available if you need it, Victorian boxers had no safety net, no pensions, no health insurance, no modern surgeries to repair the damage accumulated over a fighting career. Their bodies were the only capital they had, and once that capital was spent, options narrowed dramatically. Many ended up as sparring partners for younger fighters, their reflexes shot but their names still valuable enough to help train the next generation. Others became publicans if they'd managed to save enough to buy a license. Some worked as bouncers or security. The unlucky ones, broken beyond usefulness, often drank themselves to death on the charity of former admirers. You push these thoughts away. You're young, successful, improving with every fight. The darkness that awaits all fighters is still distant for you. The journey to Manchester takes longer than Bristol, a full day and night by coach and rail. Alan, your opponent, is a local hero in Manchester, undefeated in his home city. The Northern Hammer, they call him, though you wonder if every fighter named Jenkins or Allen is required by law to adopt the Hammer as their fighting moniker. Holmes has spared no expense this time, booking rooms at a respectable inn near the fighting venue. You even have your own room, a luxury that feels almost decadent after years of shared lodgings. The betting's heavy, Holmes informs you over dinner. Local money on Allen, of course. But your Bristol performance impressed enough London gentlemen to balance it out. What do they say about me, you ask, curious about your reputation. Holmes smiles thinly. That you're fast but untested, that Jenkins was past his prime, that Manchester will be a rude awakening. And what do you say? You press. I say I've wagered a considerable sum on you finishing Allen inside 20 rounds, he answers, cutting into his steak. So I very much hope Ned has prepared you adequately. The Manchester fighting venue is larger than anything you've experienced. A converted mill with high ceilings and space for nearly 1,000 spectators. By fight time, it's packed to the rafters, the noise deafening as locals cheer for their champion. Allen is waiting in the ring, a solid man in his late 20s with a methodical, balanced fighting style. Where Jenkins was a brawler who relied on power, Allen is known for his technique and stamina. He's never been knocked down in 17 professional fights. The referee calls you both to centre ring for instructions. Allen's eyes are calm, assessing. No trash talk, no intimidation, just the quiet confidence of a man who knows his business. Good luck, London, he says simply, his Manchester accent thick. You too, you respond, oddly comforted by his professionalism. The fight begins cautiously, both of you probing for weaknesses. Allen's reputation proves accurate. He's technically sound, with excellent defensive awareness and a snapping jab that keeps catching you as you try to close distance. By round 5, a pattern has emerged. Allen controls the centre of the ring, forcing you to circle and look for openings. When you do land, your punches seem to have little effect on his sturdy frame. Meanwhile, his methodical attack is slowly accumulating damage. A cut above your eye, bruising along your ribs, a rapidly swelling left ear where a hook caught you clean. Need to change the pattern, Ned tells you between rounds, working to close the cut. He's too comfortable. Make him uncomfortable. How? You ask, gratefully sucking water from a ladle. Get dirty. Wrestling. Inside fighting. He likes space. Take it away. This was a legitimate strategy in bare-knuckle boxing. Under London prize ring rules, wrestling moves were permitted. Fighters could clinch, grapple, and even throw their opponents to the ground. Many bouts were won through superior wrestling rather than punching power. You follow Ned's advice. Instead of boxing at Allen's preferred distance, you crowd him, tie up his arms, lean your weight on him in clinches. When he tries to establish space, you bull forward, making the fight ugly, disrupting his rhythm. The Manchester crowd hates it, booing lustily as the clean boxing match devolves into a wrestling contest. But the strategy works. Allen grows increasingly frustrated, his textbook technique less effective in a close-quarters brawl. In round 13, the fight turns. Alan, trying to create separation, pushes you hard during a clinch. As you stumble backward, he lunges forward with a right hand, but in his eagerness, he overextends. You slip the punch and counter with a short, chopping right that catches him behind the ear. It's not a powerful blow, but the placement is perfect. Alan's legs wobble momentarily, his eyes glazing. You've spent enough time around fighters to recognize the look. He's hurt, his equilibrium disrupted. You press the advantage, forcing him back toward the ropes. He recovers enough to cover defensively, but the momentum has shifted. The crowd senses it too, their boos giving way to the tense silence of collective concern. 3 more rounds of constant pressure follow. Alan, still unsteady, focuses on survival, clinching whenever you get close, taking a knee when exchanges turn against him. Each time he rises at the count of 8 or 9, breathing heavily but refusing to quit. The Manchester fans find their voice again, now cheering Alan's heart rather than his skill. "Stay up, Tommy," they chant. "Don't let the Londoner take you." Round 19 brings the end. Alan, exhausted and still fighting the effects of that shot behind the ear, drops his guard momentarily after pushing you away. You step in with a straight right hand that lands flush on his jaw. His eyes roll up, legs folding beneath him like a collapsing chair. The referee doesn't bother with a count. Alan is out cold, his undefeated Manchester record shattered. The local crowd is momentarily stunned into silence before a mix of cheers and angry shouts erupts. You're quickly surrounded by your team, Ned, Holmes, and 2 burly assistants Holmes hired for security, and hustled toward a side exit. "Outstanding," Holmes says, actually patting your shoulder. "The first physical contact he's ever initiated. 19th round. I wagered on 20 or fewer. Excellent return." In your dressing room, a luxury that didn't exist in smaller venues, you finally have a moment to process what's happened. You've just defeated an established champion on his home turf. The purse is substantial, your reputation growing with each victory. But as Ned helps you remove your hand wraps, revealing bloody knuckles and a possibly broken middle finger, you're reminded of the physical cost. Alan's precise jabs have left your face swollen and cut, and that early bodywork has you coughing painfully with deep breaths. "London next," Ned says, dabbing at a cut with surprisingly gentle hands. "Big one. Bennett himself." That gets your full attention. William, the Bulldog Bennett, is the uncrowned king of London boxing, a fighter so dominant that worthy challengers are hard to find. He hasn't lost in 5 years, and his last 3 opponents retired after facing him. "You think I'm ready?" you ask, wincing as Ned probes your ribs. "No," he answers honestly. "But Holmes has arranged it and the money's too good to pass up. 6 months to prepare. We'll make you ready." As you lie in your Manchester hotel bed that night, too wound up to sleep despite bone-deep exhaustion, you stare at the ceiling and contemplate how far you've come, from anonymous footman to challenger for the unofficial championship of London in less than 2 years. The pain that throbs through your body seems a small price for such advancement, yet a quiet voice in the back of your mind wonders if any success is worth the systematic destruction of your body. Bennett has ended careers with his fists. Some opponents never fully recovered, but that's a concern for tomorrow. Tonight, despite the pain and lingering adrenaline, your heavy eyelids finally close, carrying you into well-earned rest. Unlike you right now, warm and comfortable in your modern bed without a care in the world, Victorian fighters often went to sleep uncertain if their injuries were merely painful or genuinely serious. No X-rays to check for fractures, no MRIs for brain bleeds. Just hope, toughness, and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring more of the same. As you drift towards sleep in your clean, safe room, think about those men who willingly faced such brutality for a chance at a better life. Their courage wasn't always rewarded, but without it, they had no chance at all. London greets your return with unexpected fanfare. The sporting papers, which once ignored your existence, now feature your name prominently. The fighting footman conquers the north, screams one headline. Riley's rise continues, announces another. Holmes, ever the businessman, wastes no time capitalizing on your growing fame. He arranges a series of public exhibitions at various London sporting venues, not actual fights, but training demonstrations where the public pays to watch you skip rope, hit the bags, and spar lightly with training partners. This is ridiculous, you complain after the third such exhibition, where you performed before a crowd of nearly 200. I'm a fighter, not a circus act. You're both, Holmes corrects, counting the day's takings, and you're being well compensated for the inconvenience. He's not wrong. Your purse for these exhibitions is substantial, not fighting money, but far more than you'd have earned in a week as a footman. The boxing exhibitions were genuinely a significant source of income for Victorian fighters between matches. Similar to how modern boxers make money from promotional appearances, these exhibitions helped fighters stay financially afloat while training for major bouts. Plus, there's something else, something you'd never admit to Ned or Holmes. You're starting to enjoy the attention, the admiring glances from women, the respectful nods from men who'd have ignored you months ago, the way crowds part slightly when you enter a room, whispers following in your wake. That's him. That's Riley. Fame is a powerful intoxicant, especially for someone who spent most of their life being invisible. This newfound celebrity brings unexpected encounters. One evening, leaving an exhibition at a gentleman's sporting club, you're approached by a well-dressed man in his 50s. Something in his bearing marks him as different from the typical boxing enthusiast. An air of genuine authority rather than purchased importance. "Mr. Riley," he says, extending a hand. "Lord Queensberry, I've been following your progress with interest." You shake his hand, trying to hide your surprise. Even you recognise this name. John Douglas, the 9th Marquess of Queensberry, is one of the most influential figures in British sporting circles. An honour, my lord, you manage, grateful for Ned's endless coaching on how to address the aristocracy. "Walk with me a moment," he says, not really a request. As you fall into step beside him, he continues, "I'm working to reform prize fighting, make it a respectable sport rather than a barely legal spectacle. Rules, regulations, proper oversight, gloves, most importantly." Gloves, my lord? The concept seems almost comical. The raw confrontation of flesh against flesh is the entire point of prize fighting. Indeed, for safety and skill, bare-knuckle fighting is barbaric. He says this while looking directly at your face, with its collection of scars and a nose that's been broken at least twice. The future of boxing lies in technique, defense, the science of the sport rather than mere brutality. This is a historically accurate encounter. John Douglas, 9th Marquess of Queensberry, was indeed advocating for boxing reforms during this period. His name would become permanently associated with boxing through the Queensberry Rules published in 1867, which mandated the use of gloves and many other regulations that shaped modern boxing. "With respect, my lord, I earn my living through that brutality." He waves this away. Men like you could still thrive under proper rules, perhaps even extend your careers without hands too broken to make a fist by 30. He's not entirely wrong. Victorian bare-knuckle fighters often suffered debilitating hand injuries that shortened their careers. The human hand, with its delicate bones and joints, simply isn't designed to strike hard objects repeatedly without protection. Something to consider, Mr. Riley. Boxing's future will arrive whether men like you embrace it or resist it. With a polite nod, he leaves you to ponder his words. You mention the encounter to Ned later that night over pints at the Fighting Cock. Queensberry, Ned snorts. Fancy lord with fancy ideas. Wants to turn fighting into a gentleman's game. Gloves and rounds and points. He spits contemptuously. That's not fighting, that's dancing. You're surprised by his vehemence. Might be safer though, for the hands at least. Since when is fighting supposed to be safe? Ned demands. We're prize fighters, not cricket players. The risk is part of what makes it worth watching, worth betting on. He drains his ale and fixes you with a serious stare. Listen, lad, men like Queensberry want to take fighting away from men like us. Make it respectable so gentlemen can do it without getting their pretty faces ruined. Don't be fooled. There's truth in what he says. Throughout history, when working-class activities become adopted by the upper classes, they often change in ways that exclude their original participants. Boxing would be no exception. Over the next weeks, however, you have little time to worry about boxing's future. Its present, specifically your upcoming fight with Bennett, consumes all your attention. Your training camp for Bennett is unlike anything you've experienced before. Holmes rents a small house outside London, away from the city's distractions and pollution. You, Ned, and 2 sparring partners relocate there for focused preparation. Bennett's different from anyone you've faced, Ned explains as he wraps your hands for sparring. Jenkins had power but no technique. Allen had technique but lacked killer instinct. Bennett has everything: power, skill, experience, and the mean streak of a rabid dog. Your primary sparring partner is a fighter called Murphy, chosen specifically because his style approximates Bennett's: aggressive pressure fighting with devastating body attacks. Day after day, Murphy pummels your midsection while you work to perfect your defense and counter-punching. The training is scientific by Victorian standards. Ned times rounds with a pocket watch, tracks your food intake, and even keeps a notebook recording your progress. He has you punch through buckets of sand to strengthen your hands, run with weighted vests to build endurance, and practice specific combinations hundreds of times until they become instinctive. Most important thing, Ned tells you repeatedly, is don't let Bennett back you onto the ropes. He traps fighters there, works the body until their guard drops, then goes for the head. Stay center ring, keep moving. 1 month before the fight, disaster strikes. During a particularly intense sparring session, Murphy catches you with an awkward punch to the ribs, the same ribs that have been injured and re-injured throughout your career. Something gives way with an audible crack. The pain is immediate and debilitating. You can't take a deep breath without feeling like you're being stabbed from the inside. Broken, Ned confirms after a careful examination, maybe 2 of them. Fights in 4 weeks, you remind him through gritted teeth, as if he might have forgotten. I know. His expression is grim. Got to let it heal some. No sparring until the week before. Light bag work only, and lots of walking to keep your wind. This was the brutal reality for Victorian fighters. Modern boxers might postpone a fight due to injury during training. Back then, unless you were physically unable to stand, the show went on. Contracts were signed, bets were placed, and venues were booked. An injured fighter either fought hurt or forfeited their purse and reputation. The next 3 weeks are an exercise in frustrated restraint. While your sparring partners continue full training, you're limited to walking, light technique drills, and visualization. The lack of proper preparation gnaws at your confidence. Bennett is already the most formidable opponent you've faced. Facing him at less than full strength seems like madness. "Can we postpone?" you finally ask Holmes during one of his weekly visits to check on your progress. Holmes looks at you like you've suggested cancelling Christmas. "Postpone the most anticipated fight in London? Impossible. The betting alone is over £3,000. The venue sold out in 2 days. He studies you with calculating eyes. "How bad is it, really, the rib?" "Bad enough," you admit. "Can't take a deep breath without pain." "But you can fight?" "I can fight," you confirm, hating that there's no other acceptable answer. Holmes nods, satisfied. "Then you'll fight. Ned will find a way to manage the pain." Ned's way turns out to be a tightly wrapped bandage around your torso, so constrictive it limits your breathing but stabilizes the broken ribs. He also provides a small bottle of laudanum, an opium tincture commonly used for pain in the Victorian-Era. "Just enough to take the edge off," he cautions. "Too much and you'll be dopey. Bennett will slaughter a dopey fighter." The week of the fight arrives with the fanfare of a major sporting event. Your name appears on posters throughout London. The sporting papers feature lengthy articles analysing your chances against the seemingly invincible Bennett. The betting odds are decidedly against you, 3-1 in Bennett's favour. Bennett himself remains ominously silent. No public statements, no boasting, no pre-fight theatrics. Just the quiet confidence of a predator who doesn't need to announce his intentions. You finally see him at the official weigh-in held at the Fives Court 2 days before the fight. He's smaller than you expected, maybe 5'8" to your 6 feet, but built like a brick wall with a neck so thick it almost merges with his shoulders. His face is surprisingly unmarked for a veteran fighter, testament to his defensive skill. When you shake hands, his grip is crushing, his eyes cold and assessing. "Riley," he says simply, not hostile, but not friendly either. "Bennett," you reply, matching his tone. The conversation ends there, but something in that brief exchange leaves you unsettled. This isn't a man who fights for fame or even money, not primarily. This is someone who genuinely enjoys hurting people, who has found a socially acceptable outlet for darker impulses. The night before the fight, you lie awake in your room, mind racing despite exhaustion. The broken ribs throb with each heartbeat. Doubt creeps in like a fog. Jenkins, Allen, they were stepping stones. Bennett is a mountain. Ned finds you on the rooftop at dawn, watching the sun rise over London's chimney-crowded skyline. "Couldn't sleep?" he asks, though the answer is obvious from the shadows under your eyes. You shake your head. "Thinking too much." "Dangerous habit for a fighter," he says, settling beside you on the edge of the roof. "Thinking's for before and after. During, you just do." "What if I can't beat him, Ned?" The question has been burning inside you for weeks. He's never lost, never even been knocked down. Ned is quiet for a long moment, watching the pink-orange glow spread across the eastern sky. "No one's unbeatable, lad. No one. Bennett's just a man, bleeds like any other." "Not like any other," you argue. "You've seen him fight." "Aye, many times." Ned turns to face you fully. "Know what I see? A man who's never been truly tested, never had to fight through real adversity. Everything's come too easy for him." You're not convinced. "Because he's that good." "Because he's that feared," Ned counters. "Half his opponents were beaten before they stepped in the ring, already believing they couldn't win." He pokes you hard in the chest. "That can't be you today. You understand? Can't go in there already defeated." His words make sense, but the knot of fear in your stomach remains. You've never admitted it to anyone, but you've always been afraid before fights. The difference is that previously, hunger and desperation outweighed the fear. Now, with money in your pocket and a reputation to lose, the scales have tipped. The venue for the Bennett fight is the largest you've ever experienced, a converted theatre with seating for over 1,000 spectators. By noon, it's packed to capacity, with people still trying to buy their way in at the doors. The noise is overwhelming. Cheers, booze, betting calls, vendors selling everything from meat pies to souvenir programs. In your dressing room, actually a converted storage area behind the stage, Ned helps you prepare. The laudanum dulls the pain in your ribs to a manageable ache. The tight bandages restrict your breathing but provide crucial support. Your hands are wrapped with extra care, each finger individually before the full hand wrap. Holmes appears briefly, uncharacteristically tense. Full house, he reports. Every important sporting man in London is here, half the aristocracy too. He hesitates, then adds, I've placed my bet on you. This surprises you. Despite the ribs, despite the odds, a thin smile. I didn't get where I am by following the crowd, Riley. Just make it count. When it's time, Ned leads you through a narrow corridor towards the roaring crowd. Just before you emerge, he grabs your shoulder, turning you to face him. Remember what I said, he urges, voice fierce with conviction. Bennett's never been tested. You have. Jenkins, Allen, they made you prove yourself. Bennett's had it easy. When things get hard today, and they will, he might just break. Then you're walking out into blinding gaslights and deafening noise. The ring looks smaller than usual, or maybe Bennett just makes it seem that way as he paces within the ropes, a caged predator eager for release. The referee calls you both to center ring for instructions. Up close, Bennett radiates controlled violence, his breathing steady, eyes locked on yours with unnerving intensity. Clean fight, the referee instructs, though everyone knows the definition of clean is generous under London prize ring rules. No biting or eye gouging, but almost everything else goes. Try to last 10 rounds, Bennett says quietly, his first words to you since the weigh-in. Give these people their money's worth. Then the bell clangs, and hell begins. Bennett doesn't start cautiously like Allen, or rely on one big punch like Jenkins. He comes at you like a force of nature, cutting off the ring with practiced footwork, throwing combinations to head and body that seem to have no end. It's immediately clear that everything Ned told you about his skill was, if anything, understated. You weather the first round through defensive instinct and desperate movement, but land nothing significant in return. Your corner is uncharacteristically quiet between rounds, Ned's expression grave as he wipes blood from a cut above your eye. Need to slow him down, is all he says. Body shots when he comes in. Easier said than done. Bennett's defense is nearly impenetrable, his head movement making your punches hit air more often than flesh. Meanwhile, his own shots land with disturbing frequency, each one delivered with perfect technique for maximum damage. By round 4, your ribs are screaming in pain, the laudanum's effects fading under the onslaught. A particularly vicious liver shot doubles you over, nearly ending the fight then and there. Only pride and stubbornness keep you upright. He's breaking, Bennett comments to his corner loud enough for you to hear. One more round, the words light a fire of defiance. You won't be talked about like a thing, a foregone conclusion. The next round, you abandon Ned's careful strategy and fight back with reckless aggression. Most of your punches miss or are blocked, but a looping overhand right catches Bennett by surprise, snapping his head back. For a brief moment, shock registers on his face. You've hurt him, not badly, but enough to make him reassess. The dynamic shifts subtly. Bennett becomes more cautious, showing you a respect that wasn't there before. The middle rounds become a brutal chess match. Bennett still controls most exchanges, but you find moments to counter, to make him pay for his aggression. Your ribs are definitely re-broken, possibly worse than before, but the pain has become abstract, something happening to someone else. In round 9, disaster strikes. An exchange near the ropes leaves you slightly off balance. Bennett seizes the opportunity, landing a perfect uppercut that seems to explode inside your skull. Your legs go completely, consciousness flickering like a candle in the wind. You're on the ground without memory of falling. The referee's count reaches 5 before the fog clears enough for you to realise what's happening. At 8, you force yourself to one knee. At 9, you're upright, barely, swaying like a drunk. Bennett comes in for the kill, unleashing a barrage that you survive only through muscle memory and desperation, covering up, clinching when possible, anything to buy seconds for your head to clear. The bell saves you. In your corner, Ned works frantically to bring you back, his voice urgent in your ear. "Still with me, lad? How many fingers?" He holds up 3. 3, you mumble. "Good enough. Listen, he thinks you're done. Everyone does, but he's tired too. Breathing hard. Look at his right side when he throws the left hook. He's dropping his elbow. Counter over the top." The next round is pure survival. Bennett presses his advantage, confident of an imminent victory. You retreat, block, clinch, anything to recover and wait for the opening Ned described. It comes late in the round. Bennett throws a left hook to the body, and there it is, the slight drop of his right elbow. You throw over the top, a desperate right hand with everything you have left. The punch lands flush on Bennett's jaw, a perfect shot. His eyes go blank, legs suddenly boneless. He pitches forward, face first onto the canvas. The crowd, which had been Bennett's, erupts in disbelief. The referee, seemingly in shock himself, begins the count. Bennett stirs at 5, tries to rise at 8, but can't coordinate his limbs. At 10, it's over. You've done the impossible. Knocked out the unbeatable William Bennett. Become, in that single moment, the King of London's prize ring. The aftermath is a blur, hands lifting you, voices congratulating you, Ned's face split by a grin so wide it must hurt. Holmes is there too, looking like a man who's just won the lottery, which, given his betting, he practically has. Through it all, the pain in your ribs, your hands, your battered face registers as a distant concern. Victory is the ultimate anaesthetic. Only later, in the quiet of your room, does the full impact hit you. You're the champion now, the man to beat, the target for every hungry fighter looking to make their name, and you've never felt more broken, more in need of rest and healing. Lying in your bed, every breath a reminder of the damage done for this moment of glory. You wonder, what happens now? How many more times can your body endure this? How many more Bennett-level fighters can you survive? Questions for tomorrow. Tonight, despite the pain, despite the uncertainty, you drift towards sleep as London's champion. Unlike you now, comfortable in your modern bed with medical care just a phone call away, Victorian boxers often faced their greatest victories and most crushing defeats alone, in rented rooms with only rudimentary treatment for injuries that would require surgery and months of rehabilitation today. As sleep finally claims you, one thought surfaces through the pain and exhaustion. The higher you climb, the farther there is to fall. Fame hits like a tidal wave. One day you're Jack Riley, ambitious fighter. The next you're Champion Riley, your name on every sporting man's lips in London. They throw you a parade. Well, not a proper parade with bands and flags, but a procession of sorts. Holmes arranges for you to ride in an open carriage down the Strand, Ned beside you looking deeply uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. People line the streets, workers and gentlemen alike, cheering the new champion. "Smile, for God's sake," Holmes hisses from his seat opposite. "You look like you're attending a funeral." You try, but your face feels like one massive bruise. Your broken ribs stab with every breath, and the weight of what you've accomplished, what's expected of you now, sits heavy on your shoulders. Later, at a celebration dinner hosted by Holmes for his wealthy associates, you're the guest of honour, but feel like an exotic animal on display. Men in fine suits drink to your health while evaluating you like livestock, discussing your physical attributes as if you can't hear them. "Remarkable specimen," one red-faced banker comments. "The shoulders particularly, built for fighting these working-class types." "The question is longevity," another responds, swirling brandy in a crystal glass. Bennett was considered unbeatable, but time catches all fighters. How long before someone younger takes Riley's place? 3 good years, a third speculates. Maybe 4 if he's careful, though careful rarely describes these fighting men. You want to tell them you're right there, that you can hear every word, but you stay silent, nodding politely, playing your role. The gap between your new status and your actual power has never felt wider. This social dynamic was a brutal reality for Victorian prize fighters. Even the most successful remained in many ways performing animals for the wealthy, appreciated for their physical prowess but rarely respected as equals. The class divide remained unbridgeable, fame notwithstanding. "Could I have a word?" A quiet voice at your elbow breaks your bitter reflections. You turn to find a gentleman in his 40s, distinguished-looking with a neatly trimmed beard. "George Reynolds," he introduces himself. "I document fights, writing a history of the prize ring." "A reporter?" you ask warily. "You've learned to be cautious around the press." "A historian," he corrects gently. "I'm interested in preserving the stories of fighters like yourself, your background, your journey, the real experiences, not just the public spectacle." Something in his manner seems genuine, lacking the usual condescension. You arrange to meet him the following week at a quiet tavern, away from Holmes and his circle. That night, returning to your new lodgings, a proper apartment now with actual furniture, you examine your battered face in a mirror. The victory over Bennett came at a steep price. Your right eye remains half closed, the cheekbone beneath possibly fractured. Your nose, broken at least twice before, has taken on a permanently flattened appearance. Your ears have begun to thicken from repeated trauma. At 24, you're already wearing the mask of your profession. You'll never be mistaken for anything but a fighter. Sleep comes hard, despite exhaustion. Your ribs ache, your hands throb, and your thoughts race with unwelcome clarity. This is the pinnacle, the achievement of everything you've worked for. Why does it feel so hollow? The next weeks bring a parade of obligations, exhibition matches where you perform for paying crowds, appearances at sporting clubs where gentlemen pay to shake your hand, meetings with potential sponsors offering money to associate their products with the champion. Holmes manages it all, taking his substantial cut. The money is good, better than you ever imagined possible growing up in poverty, but the constant demand for your presence, your performance, begins to wear on you. The line between Jack Riley the man and Champion Riley the commodity blurs dangerously. Meanwhile, your body struggles to heal. The broken ribs need proper rest, as do your chronically injured hands. But complete rest isn't an option, not with contracts to fulfill and appearances to make. You train lightly, just enough to maintain your image as the fighting champion, while silently counting the cost to your long-term health. Your meeting with Reynolds, the historian, provides unexpected relief. In a quiet corner of an unremarkable pub, far from the sporting crowd, he asks questions no one else has bothered with about your childhood, your first fights, your thoughts on the future of boxing. The Queensberry rules are gaining traction, he notes, referencing the new regulations mandating gloved fighting. What do you think? Will gloved boxing replace the traditional prize ring? You consider this honestly. Maybe, probably. Bare knuckles, it's brutal, makes for shorter careers. Like yours might be? He asks perceptively. The question catches you off guard. No one else has acknowledged the obvious, that despite your championship status, your body is already breaking down. Every fight takes something, you admit. Something you don't get back. Bennett took more than most. Reynolds nods, not with pity, but understanding. The public sees the glory. They don't see the aftermath. Neither did I, starting out, you confess. Thought I was indestructible. The historian smiles, sadly. They all do. Tom Cribb, Tom Spring, Jem Ward. Every champion I've interviewed says the same. The human body isn't meant to absorb such punishment indefinitely. This was the cruel reality of Victorian boxing. Fighters often peaked in their mid-20s, their careers cut short by accumulated damage. Without modern medical care, injuries that today might be surgically repaired instead became permanent disabilities. Broken hands never properly healed. Damaged eyes gradually lost vision. Repeated concussions led to slurred speech, tremors, memory loss. What we now recognize as chronic traumatic encephalopathy or CTE. 2 months after the Bennett fight, when your ribs have healed enough for proper training, Ned sits you down for a serious conversation. Need to talk about what's next, he says, unusually solemn. Holmes wants to book a championship defense against Miller from Birmingham. He's good, you comment non-committally. He's more than good. He's younger, fresher, hasn't taken the damage you have. Ned looks uncomfortable. Listen, Jack, you've done what no one expected. Become champion from nothing, but every fighter has a clock running. Yours started ticking faster after Bennett. You've never heard Ned speak so directly about the limited lifespan of a fighting career. It's usually the unspoken truth hanging over every training session, every fight. You saying I should retire? As champion? The idea seems absurd. You're at your peak, financially, if not physically. Not saying that, just saying be selective, pick the right fights, make the money while you can, but don't throw yourself to the wolves out of pride. He rubs his scarred knuckles, the joints swollen from his own fighting days. I've seen too many champions fight too long, end up punch-drunk and broke. His concern touches you. Despite his gruff exterior, Ned has become something between a father and an older brother. He's invested in your success, yes, but also in your survival. So, not Miller? Not Miller, he confirms. I'm thinking Cartwright. Decent name, decent skills, but styles make fights, and his style works for us. Holmes won't like it, less dramatic, but he'll accept it. This conversation highlights a crucial aspect of boxing few outside the sport fully understand: the careful matchmaking that goes into building and maintaining a champion's career. It wasn't about always facing the best, but about balancing risk and reward, navigating the treacherous waters between 2 easy fights that damage your credibility and 2 difficult ones that end your reign prematurely. Modern boxing fans often criticize champions for ducking tough opponents, but this strategic approach to matchmaking has always been part of the sport. In the Victorian-Era, with no sanctioning bodies or mandatory challengers, a champion had even more latitude to select opponents, though public opinion still mattered. Holmes isn't pleased when you and Ned present your preference for Cartwright over Miller, but he eventually relents. Fine, Cartwright has a following in the East End. We can sell it, but after him, Miller becomes unavoidable if you want to maintain your standing. The Cartwright fight is scheduled for 3 months out, standard preparation time for a championship bout. Your training camp starts with renewed purpose, your body having had time to partially recover from the Bennett battle. But halfway through camp during a sparring session, disaster strikes again. You slip a punch and pivot, a movement you've made thousands of times, but this time something gives way in your left knee with a sickening pop. The pain is immediate and incapacitating. Ligament, the doctor pronounces after examining the swollen joint. Torn or severely strained? Can it be fixed? You ask, already knowing the answer. The doctor's expression says it all. In 1847, joint injuries were poorly understood and largely untreatable. No surgery, no rehabilitation protocols, just rest and hope. It will stabilise somewhat with time, he offers. A month of complete rest, then gradually strengthen it. But it won't be the same. You'll need to adapt your fighting style. A month of rest means postponing the fight, something Holmes vigorously opposes when informed. Tickets are sold. Bets are placed. The sporting papers have been promoting this for weeks. It cannot be postponed. His tone leaves no room for negotiation. He can't put weight on the leg, Ned argues. How's he supposed to fight? Figure it out, Holmes replies coldly. That's what I pay you for. This callous attitude toward fighters' health wasn't unusual. Boxing was business, and business concerns trumped physical well-being. Modern boxing, with medical suspensions and rigorous pre-fight examinations, offers protections Victorian fighters could only dream of. In the weeks before the Cartwright fight, you and Ned work desperately to adapt. You develop a new stance that puts minimal weight on the injured leg. You practice fighting off the ropes, using them for support when the knee threatens to buckle. You drill counterpunching relentlessly, knowing you won't have the mobility to lead the action. It's not ideal, Ned admits, after a particularly frustrating training session, but it might be enough. Cartwright's aggressive. He'll come to you. Make him pay when he does. The night of the fight, your knee is heavily wrapped beneath your trunks. Ned has also procured a stronger laudanum solution for the pain. Riskier in terms of affecting your reflexes, but necessary if you're to have any chance. Cartwright is everything Ned described. Aggressive, powerful, but somewhat predictable. He charges from the opening bell, looking to overwhelm you with volume and pressure. Under normal circumstances, you'd circle away, establish your jab, control distance. But with your compromised mobility, you're forced to stand your ground, block what you can, and look for countering opportunities. It makes for a brutal, crowd-pleasing fight. Cartwright lands plenty, driving you to the ropes repeatedly, but each time he overcommits, you make him pay with short, sharp counters. By round 10, his face is a mess, though you're not unmarked yourself. The decisive moment comes in round 14. Cartwright, frustrated by his inability to finish you despite your obvious injury, lunges in carelessly. You sidestep, agonizing pain shooting through your knee, and catch him with a perfect right cross as he enters. His momentum combined with your punch creates devastating impact. He drops immediately, unconscious before he hits the canvas. The crowd explodes. The champion has defended his title in dramatic fashion, apparently overcoming adversity through heart and skill. Only you, Ned, and the doctor know the full extent of that adversity and the price paid to overcome it. In your dressing room afterward, as the doctor examines your now massively swollen knee, Holmes arrives with your purse and congratulations. Oh, spectacular performance, he enthuses. The sporting papers will love this. Champion overcomes injury to retain title. I can see the headlines now. You look up sharply. Who said I was injured? Holmes smiles thinly. Please, the way you were standing, your limited movement. Any knowledgeable observer could tell, but it makes for a better story. The courageous champion fighting through pain. Not a story, you mutter, wincing as the doctor probes your knee. Not a bloody story at all. Everything's a story in this business, Riley. Holmes counts out your share of the purse. Substantial, but you're beginning to realise likely less than your true market value. Rest that leg. Miller awaits in the new year. After he leaves, the doctor delivers his verdict. The ligament is completely torn now. The joint is unstable. Fighting on it again? He shakes his head. Inadvisable. How long for it to heal? Ned asks. Heal? It won't heal as such. The body can't repair a fully torn ligament. With complete rest, the swelling will subside and he might regain some function, but another fight will likely cripple him permanently. The doctor's words hang heavy in the small room. This isn't a broken rib or a cut that will mend with time. This is potentially career-ending. There must be something, you protest. Some treatment. There are surgeons experimenting with joint repairs, he concedes reluctantly, in Paris and Vienna, but the procedures are experimental, expensive, and often unsuccessful, and certainly not available to... He trails off, but his meaning is clear. Not available to someone of your social standing, despite your championship status. For the first time, you face the possibility that your fighting career might be over, not in some distant future, but now, at what should be your peak. The thought is terrifying. Fighting is all you know, all you've built your identity around. What happens, you ask Ned, when you're alone? To champions who can't fight anymore? Ned doesn't sugarcoat it. Depend. Victorian fashion was so extreme that women's corsets could reduce their waist size by up to 10 inches. The average woman's natural waist was 27 to 29 inches, but society celebrated the ideal 18-inch waist, all while doctors raised concerns about breathing difficulties and circulation problems. If you enjoy these stories, hit subscribe. Also, drop your location in the comments. I'm always curious where everyone's listening from. We're heading to Victorian England in a minute. First though, get comfortable. Seriously, take a second, adjust whatever needs adjusting. You're not going to want to move once we start. The pressure around your ribs is the first thing you notice. Even before opening your eyes, you can feel it, like a giant hand squeezing your torso. Welcome to morning as a Victorian woman in 1870. You blink awake in a modest bedroom, lying on a horsehair mattress that crinkles when you shift. The room is cold, damn cold actually. The coal fire died hours ago and frost patterns decorate the inside of your window panes. Unlike your cozy blanket right now, the thin wool coverings barely trap any heat. Time to rise, ma'am. Your lady's maid, Agnes, has entered silently. She's already been up for hours, lighting fires, preparing your clothes, heating water. She looks exhausted, but that's not your concern right now. You have your own battle ahead. Is it really necessary today, you ask, eyeing the contraption Agnes is laying out on the dressing table. I'm only visiting Mother. Agnes gives you that look, the one that says, we have this conversation every morning. Your mother would be the first to notice if you weren't properly dressed, ma'am, she replies diplomatically. She's right, your mother would definitely notice and comment, and then tell everyone else she knows. The thought makes your stomach clench. The corset lies there like an instrument of torture, which honestly it basically is. Whalebone and steel designed to force your body into an impossible shape. Last week you heard about a woman whose corset was so tight that when she died they found her ribs had grown around it. Like a tree growing around a fence. Your body literally reshaping itself to accommodate this cage. Shall we begin? Agnes asks. First comes the chemise, a thin cotton undergarment that serves as a barrier between your skin and the corset. Then cotton drawers tied at the waist. Already you're warmer, silver linings, I guess. Agnes holds the corset up against your torso. It's a well-made piece, Custom fitted last year when you still had dreams of achieving an 18-inch waist. You're hovering around 20 inches now, which your husband has deemed acceptable. How generous of him. Deep breath, ma'am, Agnes warns. You inhale as much as possible, knowing that soon breathing deeply won't be an option. Agnes wraps the corset around your torso and begins the lacing process. The first few tugs are manageable, just a gentle pressure, but as Agnes works her way down, each pull becomes more restrictive. Your ribs compress, your lungs can't fully expand, your internal organs are literally shifting position. A bit tighter, ma'am. The blue dress needs a smaller waist. Just a bit more, you gasp. Agnes braces her foot against the bedpost for leverage, pulling the laces with all her strength. You grip the bedpost, knuckles white. Jesus, you mutter under your breath. How is this fashion? Language, ma'am, Agnes reminds you, but there's sympathy in her voice. She's not immune. She wears a corset too, though a cheaper, less restrictive version. The pressure required for your waist would prevent her from completing her physically demanding work. With a final tug, Agnes ties off the laces. You try to breathe and find you can only take shallow sips of air. Your lower ribs are compressed almost to meeting in the middle. There now. Beautiful, Agnes says, steering you toward the mirror. The transformation is undeniable. Your waist is impossibly small, creating that coveted hourglass figure. But at what cost? You already feel lightheaded, and you haven't even gone downstairs yet. Dr. Harrison's warning echoes in your mind. These contraptions are slowly killing you, ladies, he'd said during your last visit for female troubles. Your mother had been scandalized, insisting he was being dramatic. But when he showed you those medical drawings, the way organs get crushed and displaced, you couldn't unsee it. The women in your circle dismiss such warnings. Men have always tried to control what we wear, your friend Elizabeth had said last week. First they want us in corsets, then they claim to want us out of them for our health. Make up your minds, gentlemen. You had laughed along, but privately wondered if maybe the doctors had a point. Your monthly courses had become irregular and painful since tightening your corset to please your husband, and that fainting spell at the Hendersons' dinner party last month. Definitely from lack of oxygen. Now, for the petticoats, Agnes announces, holding up what looks like enough fabric to sail a small ship. Layer by layer, Agnes builds your silhouette. First, the cotton petticoat, then two more made of heavier material. Already, you're carrying several pounds of fabric, all hanging from your compressed waist. Your lower back begins to ache in protest. I was reading about this American woman, you tell Agnes as she works. Amelia Bloomer. She wears trousers under a shorter skirt. Can you imagine? Agnes looks scandalized. Trousers on a lady. What would the neighbours say? That's exactly what my husband said, you sigh. But think how much easier it would be to move, to breathe, to exist. Easier isn't always proper, ma'am, Agnes says diplomatically, though you can see a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Next comes your bustle, a metal cage that attaches at your lower back, creating that fashionable posterior shelf that men supposedly find attractive. It adds another pound of weight and makes sitting a strategic challenge. You'll spend the day perching on the edges of chairs or standing until your feet throb. The blue dress goes on last, a beautiful creation of silk and lace with 57 tiny buttons down the back that poor Agnes must fasten one by one. By the time she's done, your back is ramrod straight, your waist is cinched to painful proportions, and your lungs can only expand by about half their capacity. There, Agnes says with satisfaction, you look like a proper lady. You study your reflection. Yes, you've achieved the ideal Victorian silhouette. Tiny waist, ample bosom, wide hips. The dress is beautiful, but already spots dance before your eyes from shallow breathing. Your ribs send shooting pains with every movement. And you know that by evening the flesh under your corset will be raw and chafed, possibly bleeding in spots. Is beauty worth this? Agnes brings your jewellery next, a cameo brooch from your husband, earrings from your father, and a delicate gold chain. These small personal touches are the only parts of your appearance truly under your control. Oh, I almost forgot, Agnes says, retrieving a small bottle from your dressing table. Your mother sent this over. She says all the ladies are using it for a youthful complexion. You examine the bottle. Dr. Campbell's Arsenic Complexion Wafers. Arsenic? You ask, alarmed. Isn't that poison? In large doses, ma'am, but these are perfectly safe in small amounts. The lady down the street has been taking them for months and her skin is like porcelain. You've heard the rumours, though. The woman 3 doors down who took similar wafers and ended up with tremors in her hands. The socialite who died suddenly after using arsenic powders for years. I think I'll pass for today, you say, setting the bottle aside. Agnes looks worried. Your mother will ask if you've tried them. Then let her ask. This small rebellion feels significant. You can't escape the corset. Not yet, anyway, but you can refuse to literally poison yourself for beauty. As Agnes styles your hair, you gaze out the window at the street below. A delivery boy races past on a bicycle, moving freely, breathing deeply. You feel a stab of envy so intense it takes you by surprise. Do you ever wonder what it would be like, you ask Agnes suddenly, to move through the world without all this? Agnes pauses, hairpin in hand. Sometimes, ma'am, when I see my brother run across a field or climb a tree, she lowers her voice. And sometimes at night, I loosen my corset when no one's looking, just to remember what it feels like to take a real breath. This confession creates an unexpected moment of solidarity between you, 2 women separated by class but united by the same physical restrictions. Maybe someday, you say, though you don't finish the thought. Agnes adds the final touches to your hair, a complex arrangement of curls and twists that you couldn't possibly reproduce on your own, another way you're dependent on others just to present yourself acceptably to society. Ready to go downstairs, ma'am? You nod, though ready isn't quite the word. You're armoured, packaged, presented, but definitely not comfortable or free. You stand carefully, feeling the weight of the fabrics, the squeeze of the corset, the pinch of 2 small shoes. The day stretches before you, a series of restrictive spaces, limited movements, shallow breaths, and careful social performances. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. As you make your way toward the door, you catch sight of a pamphlet on your writing desk, something your husband's progressive cousin had slipped to you at last week's dinner party. The Rational Dress Society, the headline reads. You'd hidden it quickly, but the ideas inside have been haunting you. Could women really dress differently? Could you someday walk through the world without feeling like your body is in a cage? Agnes follows your gaze and quickly adjusts your skirt, drawing your attention away from the forbidden literature. Best not to dwell on such things, ma'am, she says quietly. Some battles can't be won in a day. You take as deep a breath as your corset allows and prepare to descend the stairs. One careful step at a time, as befits a proper Victorian lady. The weight of expectations feels heavier than all your clothing combined. Breakfast is a painful affair, not the food itself. Cook has prepared a lovely spread of toast, eggs and kippers, but the actual process of eating while corseted is miserable. Your compressed stomach can only handle small bites, and even those sit uncomfortably. Your husband barely notices your discomfort. He's hidden behind his newspaper, occasionally making comments about politics or business that require no real response from you. This is probably a blessing. At least you don't have to make conversation while struggling to breathe. I'll be at the club until late, he announces, folding his paper. The Hendersons are coming for dinner tomorrow, so make sure you look presentable. The way his eyes flicker to your face makes his meaning clear. The Hendersons are influential, and Mrs. Henderson is known for her flawless complexion and fashionable appearance. You'll need to do better than just a corset tomorrow. After he leaves, you return to your dressing room where Agnes has laid out your beauty regimen. The array of bottles, pots, and tools looks more like a chemist's laboratory than cosmetics. "Shall we begin with the face treatments, Ma'am?" Agnes asks. You nod, settling onto the stool before your vanity mirror. The woman who stares back at you is pale, not the fashionable porcelain pallor, but the sickly pallor of someone who rarely sees the sun. Dark circles rim your eyes from another night of uncomfortable sleep in your corset. Mrs. Henderson uses that new face cream, you muse. The one with... what is it called? Ammonia, ma'am, Agnes says, reaching for a white jar. Said to remove impurities from the skin. She unscrews the lid, and the sharp, acrid smell makes your eyes water immediately. Inside is a white paste that supposedly bleaches the skin to the desired marble-like perfection. "Are you sure this is safe?" you ask, wrinkling your nose. Agnes hesitates. Lady Caroline swears by it, though her lady's maid told me in confidence that it burned her skin something awful the first week. And the alternative is... Agnes gestures to the array of other options, creams containing lead, mercury, or arsenic, all guaranteed to create that coveted deathly pallor that signifies you've never had to work outside in the sun. "You know," Agnes says quietly, "my grandmother used to make a face cream from beeswax and rose water. Didn't turn you white as a ghost, but it kept her skin nice into old age." You consider this. A natural option sounds appealing, but would it be enough? Society doesn't want nice skin. It wants unnaturally pale, artificially perfect skin, the kind that shows you can afford to poison yourself slowly in the name of beauty. "Let's try the ammonia cream," you decide, mentally preparing for the burn, but not too much. Agnes nods and dips her fingers into the jar, then begins applying the cream to your face in light circular motions. The burning sensation is immediate, a chemical fire across your skin. Your eyes water and your nose runs, but you force yourself to remain still. "It's working, Ma'am," Agnes says encouragingly. "Your skin is already turning whiter. Probably because all the blood is retreating in terror," you mutter, which makes Agnes stifle a laugh. Next comes the powder, a fine white dust that Agnes applies with a large puff. It contains bismuth, a heavy metal that gives that desired matte finish. You try not to think about how it's slowly absorbing into your skin day after day, year after year. "Now for your eyes, ma'am?" Agnes reaches for a small dropper bottle containing a clear liquid. "Is that the belladonna?" "Yes, ma'am, for brightening the eyes." You've used it before, drops made from deadly nightshade that dilate the pupils dramatically, creating a doe-eyed, luminous look that men find attractive. The side effects include blurred vision, sensitivity to light, and if used too frequently, blindness. But what's a little vision damage in the pursuit of beauty? "Just one drop in each eye," you instruct, tilting your head back. Agnes carefully administers the drops. The familiar burning sensation follows, then the strange feeling of your pupils expanding beyond their natural size, letting in too much light. The world becomes slightly fuzzy around the edges. "Beautiful," Agnes murmurs, "like starlit pools." You blink rapidly, trying to clear your vision. This temporary beauty will make reading impossible for at least 3 hours, and you'll need to avoid bright windows. A small price to pay, you're told. "Remember what happened to Lady Pembroke?" you ask Agnes as she prepares the rouge pot. "They say she went completely blind from belladonna drops." "I heard it was her own fault," Agnes replies, repeating the gossip of the servants' quarters, using them 3 times a day instead of once. You wonder what drove Lady Pembroke to such extremes. Was her husband particularly demanding? Did she feel the constant pressure to be more beautiful, more perfect, more doll-like for the male gaze? Or was she simply caught in the same beauty trap as all of you, competing in an endless game where the rules were written by men and the players were all women? Now for your lips, ma'am. Agnes takes a small brush and dips it into a pot of red salve. This, at least, is relatively harmless, just beeswax tinted with carmine from crushed beetles. The irony isn't lost on you. The one beauty product that won't slowly poison you is made from insects. Agnes, you say suddenly as she applies the tint to your lips. Do you think our daughters will still be doing all this? 20, 30 years from now? Agnes pauses, brush in hand. Hard to say, ma'am. My mother wore a corset even tighter than yours. Said in her day they'd lace until someone fainted, then loosen it just enough to wake them up. That's horrible. That was fashion, Agnes shrugs. Though I did hear about some ladies starting a society against it all. The rational something or other. Rational Dress Society, you supply, thinking of the pamphlet hidden in your desk drawer. Agnes nods. My cousin works for a lady who's joined it. Says they want women in shorter skirts and looser bodices. Some even wear trousers underneath like men. The idea is both scandalous and thrilling. To move freely, to breathe fully, to exist in your body rather than being packaged in it. What do you think would happen, you ask, genuinely curious, if I just didn't wear a corset one day? Agnes looks genuinely alarmed. Oh, ma'am, you couldn't. Your husband would notice straight away, and if you went out, why, everyone would talk. But what if all women decided at once they couldn't ostracize all of us? I suppose not, ma'am, but who'd be the first? That's the problem, isn't it? Someone has to go first. Someone has to brave the ridicule, the social suicide of defying convention. And despite your private rebellious thoughts, you know it won't be you. Not today, anyway. Now for your hair, ma'am, Agnes says, changing the subject. She picks up the curling tongs that have been heating by the fire. They're red hot, designed to create the tight ringlets currently in fashion. Your scalp still bears small scars from previous burns. An occupational hazard of Victorian hairstyling. Agnes is skilled, but accidents happen, especially when working with tools literally designed to burn. Have you heard about that new permanent waving machine? Agnes asks as she carefully wraps a strand of your hair around the hot metal. They say it can curl your hair for weeks, not just days. The Nestler machine? I read about it. Didn't the inventor burn his wife's hair off twice while perfecting it? That's what I heard, Agnes confirms with a slight smile. Must have been quite devoted to him to let him try a third time. You share a laugh at this, a rare moment of feminine solidarity across class lines. Both of you understand the painful absurdity of what women endure. The smell of singed hair fills the room as Agnes continues her work. It's not burning, just cooking slightly. Another unpleasant aspect of beauty that everyone pretends not to notice. Your friend Elizabeth visited Paris last season and returned with tales of women who coloured their hair with dyes containing lead, mercury and silver nitrate. Some had developed strange symptoms, trembling hands, headaches, even partial paralysis, but their hair was fashionably coloured, so many considered it a reasonable trade. Did you see Mrs. Whitmore at the Johnsons' dinner? Agnes asks as she works. Her new lady's maid used to work for an actress. Did her hair with something special. It did look unusually red, you recall. Very striking. Apparently it's henna mixed with something else. Can't recall the name, but her maid said it's turning Mrs. Whitmore's hair brittle as straw. Coming out in handfuls it is. You wince, not just from the hot curling tongs near your ear. Is there anything we do that doesn't eventually harm us? Agnes considers this seriously. Sleep, perhaps, though my mother always slept in papillotes to curl her hair and woke with awful headaches from the tight wrapping, with your hair finally arranged in an elaborate style that will require you to sleep sitting up to preserve it. Agnes steps back to admire her work. Perfect, ma'am. Now for the finishing touch. From a velvet-lined box, she removes your pearl earrings, heavy pendants that will drag at your earlobes all day, eventually stretching the holes until they tear, as happened to your grandmother. Beauty is pain, after all. I don't think I need the earrings today, you decide. Just visiting mother, after all. Agnes looks surprised but pleased. These small rebellions feel significant, even if they're tiny in the grand scheme of things. As Agnes helps you rise, you catch sight of yourself in the full-length mirror. The transformation is complete. You've gone from a natural human woman to a Victorian ideal. Wasp-waisted, pale-skinned, bright-eyed, with elaborate curls and artificially reddened lips. You look beautiful by the standards of your time. You also look like you're slowly killing yourself, which, in a way, you are. The door opens and your lady's maid from the neighbouring estate enters, looking distraught. Begging your pardon, ma'am, but could Agnes come quick? It's Lady Russell. She's collapsed again. Agnes looks to you for permission, which you quickly grant. What happened? You ask the maid. Her corset, ma'am. Tightened it more than usual for the garden party. Couldn't breathe proper. And when she tried to sit for tea, she just folded. Doctor's been called, but the master is in a state. You exchange a look with Agnes. This happens more often than anyone acknowledges. Women fainting from oxygen deprivation, their compressed organs simply giving up. Usually they're loosened, revived and sent right back to the same practices that caused the problem. Tell Lady Russell I'll call tomorrow, you tell the maid. And Agnes, perhaps bring her that pamphlet from my desk. Agnes's eyes widen slightly, but she nods. A small act of rebellion passing forbidden literature, but maybe, just maybe, if enough women start questioning these practices. After Agnes leaves, you stand alone in your dressing room, surrounded by bottles of poisons disguised as beauty aids. Your skin tingles from the ammonia cream. Your eyes struggle to focus from the belladonna. Your ribs ache from the corset. Your scalp stings from the hot tongs. All of this suffering for beauty, all of this danger for social acceptance. You think of your mother enduring these same rituals for 30 years. You think of Lady Russell, unconscious from a too tight corset. You think of the pamphlet now making its way to another potential convert to rational dress. Change comes slowly, then all at once. Perhaps you're witnessing the slow part, the quiet questioning, the private rebellions, the whispered conversations between women about whether there might be another way to exist in the world. You take a final look in the mirror. Today, you'll play by society's rules. You'll visit your mother corseted, painted and proper, but you've refused the arsenic wafers. You've skipped the heavy earrings. You've passed along dangerous literature. Small acts of rebellion, but they have to start somewhere. With careful, measured steps, the only kind possible in your restrictive clothing, you make your way downstairs to begin your day, wondering if your daughter or granddaughter might someday walk freely, breathe deeply, and exist in her body as nature intended. It seems an impossible dream, but then again, all change begins as an impossible dream. The carriage ride to your mother's home is uncomfortable. Each bump in the road jars your compressed organs, sending small shocks of pain through your abdomen. You try to sit perfectly straight, as slouching in a corset creates its own special kind of torture, the rigid boning digging into your flesh like knives. Your mother's home appears around the corner, a respectable townhouse with lace curtains visible through gleaming windows, the perfect Victorian home designed to showcase the perfect Victorian wife who maintains it. Your mother greets you in the parlour, her own waist impossibly tiny for a woman in her 50s. You wonder how many decades her organs have been compressed, reshaped, rearranged within her body. Has she ever taken a full breath? You can't remember ever seeing it. "Darling," she says, kissing your cheek, "you look acceptable, though your complexion could use some help. Have you tried those arsenic wafers I sent over?" "Not yet, mother," you reply. "I've been feeling a bit unwell." She frowns. All the more reason to use them. Nothing enhances a woman's beauty like a touch of illness. Men adore the delicate look. She leans closer. Mrs. Carrington has been taking them for months and received 3 marriage proposals for her daughters already this season. You don't mention that Mrs. Carrington's youngest daughter confided in you that she's been coughing blood recently. Beauty has its price, and in Victorian England that price is often paid in health. "I've come for your advice, actually," you say, changing the subject. "The Hendersons are coming to dinner tomorrow, and you know how particular they are." Your mother brightens immediately. If there's one thing she excels at, it's managing a proper Victorian household. "You must impress them," she says firmly. "A woman is judged by her home as much as her appearance. It reflects your capabilities as a wife." And so begins a lengthy lecture on household management, the backbone of a Victorian woman's existence. While men run the outside world, women are expected to create perfect domestic sanctuaries. This is no small task, even with servants to do the physical labour. Prepare something impressive, but not ostentatious, your mother advises. You don't want to appear as if you're trying too hard. Perhaps the duck with cherry sauce, followed by a Charlotte Russe. You nod, mentally adding these items to your list. Maintaining the perfect balance is exhausting, impressive enough to show your husband's prosperity, but not so lavish that you appear nouveau riche or wasteful. And make sure the parlour is immaculate, she continues. Mrs. Henderson has been known to run her finger along mantelpieces when she thinks no one is looking. You suppress a sigh. "I'll speak to the housekeeper." Do more than speak, darling. Inspect everything yourself. A proper mistress knows every inch of her domain. This is the expectation, that even with a full staff of servants, you will personally oversee every detail. Your role is not to do the work, but to ensure it's done perfectly. An impossible standard that keeps you constantly vigilant, constantly anxious. "Remember," your mother says, "the angel of the house must create a sanctuary for her husband away from the harshness of the business world. The angel of the house, that Victorian ideal of womanhood that's been drilled into you since childhood. The perfect wife who maintains a perfect home, all while appearing effortlessly beautiful, unfailingly pleasant, and eternally selfless. A domestic goddess who exists only to make others comfortable while ignoring her own discomfort." "And how is Henry?" your mother asks, referring to your husband. "Working hard, I assume." "Very hard," you reply automatically. "He's at his club this evening. Business matters." Your mother nods approvingly. As it should be. A man needs his freedom, and a wise wife never questions his absences. You think of Henry's late nights, the perfume that sometimes clings to his clothes, the lipstick stain you once found on his handkerchief. Your mother's generation would say it's simply a man's nature, something to be ignored in exchange for financial security and social standing. Now, About the dinner service, your mother continues, launching into detailed instructions about silver placement and napkin folding. By the time you leave your mother's home, your head is spinning with instructions and reminders. The weight of expectations feels even heavier than your corset and layers of clothing. Back at your own house, you find the housekeeper, Mrs. Peters, waiting for you with a worried expression. Begging your pardon, ma'am, but we've had an issue with the kitchen range. Cook says it's smoking something terrible. And so begins the real work of being the Victorian angel of the house. For the next several hours, you move from crisis to crisis. The kitchen range needs cleaning, but the chimney sweep can't come until Thursday. You'll need to find an emergency replacement before the Hendersons arrive. The parlour curtains have a small stain that everyone missed. They'll need to be taken down and cleaned immediately. The fishmonger delivered inferior quality salmon. You'll have to send someone to the market first thing tomorrow for replacements. One of the housemaids is showing signs of consumption. Do you dismiss her immediately to protect the household, or allow her to stay until she finds new employment? Each decision falls to you. Not the physical labour, you have servants for that, but the mental load of managing this domestic machine, and all while looking perfectly composed, never letting anyone see you sweat beneath your layers of proper clothing. The table linens, ma'am, Mrs. Peters says, bringing you a selection. Which would you prefer for tomorrow's dinner? You examine each option carefully. This seemingly small decision could impact how the Hendersons perceive your entire household. Too ornate suggests trying to impress. Too simple implies carelessness. This one, you decide, selecting a cream damask with subtle embroidery. And the silver candlesticks, I think, but not the new ones. We don't want to appear boastful. Mrs. Peters nods approvingly. She understands the complex social calculations as well as you do. And shall I have the parlour fire lit an hour before they arrive? Mrs. Henderson is known to feel the cold. Yes, and make sure the drawing room is slightly warmer than the dining room. We want them comfortable throughout the evening. These minutiae, fire temperatures, linen choices, silver selections, consume your day. Your corseted body moves from room to room, inspecting, directing, ensuring that every detail is perfect. This is your domain, your purpose, your prison. You pause in the drawing room, suddenly light-headed. The combination of restricted breathing and constant movement is taking its toll. Spots dance before your eyes, and you reach for a chair. Ma'am, Mrs. Peters appears in the doorway, concerned. Are you unwell? Just a moment of weakness, you assure her, though your vision is still blurry. Perhaps I'll rest before dinner. But there's no time for rest. The household accounts need reviewing, tomorrow's menu must be finalised, and you need to write several social correspondence letters before evening. This is the hidden labour of Victorian womanhood, the constant mental and emotional work behind the facade of effortless grace. Men may mock women's leisure, but they don't see the complex machinery you maintain. In your private study, you review the household accounts with meticulous care. Every penny must be accounted for, every expenditure justified. Your husband provides an allowance for household expenses, and you're expected to work miracles with it. The butcher has raised his prices again. The coal delivery was short by nearly a bucket. One of the kitchen maids broke a teacup from the good service. Each entry requires a decision. A solution. You're essentially running a small business, but without the recognition or authority that would come with a formal business role. Instead, your success is measured by invisibility, the smooth running of a household where problems are solved before anyone notices them. Ma'am, your lady's maid has returned from Lady Russell's. I delivered that pamphlet as you asked. And how is Lady Russell? Recovered, ma'am, but shaken. The doctor advised her to loosen her stays, but her husband, Agnes pauses, then finishes diplomatically, prefers her current silhouette. You understand the unspoken reality. Lady Russell will continue to risk her health